Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for this exhibition walkthrough today. I'm Sarah Traver, I'm the director here at Traver Gallery, and I'm here with Granite Calimpong. Granite is showing with the gallery in his first solo exhibition, although you've been a friend of the gallery for much longer than that, and have had work both here and at Vetri and exhibitions over the years. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have this exhibition up, and we're really proud of this body of work that you've created and having it here in the gallery. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing here and about the show?
Yeah. So let's see. First, thanks for having me for the show. I'm super excited to have a show here. I was telling someone during the opening that this was one of the first places I came when I moved to Seattle. Just came to the gallery and I've been coming to shows ever since then, so it's super exciting to have an opening here. With this body of work, it's a bit of a departure from what I had been doing in glass previously, which I feel like was a lot of vessel forms, very strong, clean lines, and this is very sort of like these amorphous, natural, sort of organic surfaces, soft forms, and really concentrating on kind of what I see as the highlights of what glass can do and also what ceramics can do, and sort of pitting those things against each other.
You mentioned that looking at both glass and ceramics, and as we walk through the exhibition we'll see just kind of how you've combined some of these materials. It's really interesting the way you've kind of bridged these interests, and you have expertise in both materials. It's not often that we see them together in this way.
Yeah, and I think I started in ceramics before I got into glass, and then moved on to glass, and I was kind of approaching those two things separately and bouncing back and forth, and really had a desire to bring those two things together in a meaningful way for me. Kind of how could I combine them and really use them together in a way that they spoke together in an interesting way. This body of work is sort of an attempt at that, to bring those two loves together. Yeah,
let's take a look at some of the pieces in the show. Maybe we can start here. This is I love the combination of that like really kind of soft, organic, round form, which is so, lovely in glass. It's kind of what glass wants to do in a lot of respects. And then the much more kind of formal, almost like it's very playful in its use of colors. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I guess just for starters, the body of this object is similar to a lot of the bodies of the glass objects, in that they have this process that has yielded this sort of like natural texture. The process is pretty similar along all the pieces, but the color is kind of, there's a lot of unknown of what they're going to do. And so that's just kind of like a backstory on what is going on there. That was a result from this residency I had in 2016 at the Museum of Glass, and I was really trying to approximate this look of what happens in certain types of ceramic glazes.
Oh, cool.
And had done some experimenting, and then ended up on this process, and the materials are similar, but they're also very different, and kind of this is just what was happening with the glass, and I got really interested in it. And so the varied surfaces throughout the exhibition with the glass surfaces are all a similar process, but the result is based on the colors that are used. For a lot of the forms, I was really interested in having these very simple, soft forms, and really letting the color and the texture be the focal point for the main parts. And I would say throughout the pieces, there's usually some sort of like very organic textural element offset with some very optical, kind of like bright glass components. I think over the time that I've been involved in glass, I started off being sort of very like put off by this sort of brightness and like this
the glassiness.
Pure glassiness. I think especially because I came from ceramics, and in particular wood-fired ceramics, I was doing like a lot of very earthy, brown, like dull surfaces. So initially that sort of caught me off guard, and then over time really came to embrace the glassiness. And then for me, having those two things together really sort of like highlight, kind of the strengths of both materials, and also just like these very organic textural components offset by these very sort of glassy and optic components.
Yeah, we can see that really clearly in some of these ones where it's like the ceramic body the smaller glass elements, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
that juxtaposition is really beautiful and unexpected. You know, it's been fun to watch people respond to the work, and just the surprise that people feel as they encounter these pieces, I think, is really, it's really wonderful. I mean, it's kind of what we hope for in the gallery, is that people can come in here and see something that is unexpected or new or fresh in a way, and that's very much been the case with this show, I think. Just challenging people to think about those textural qualities, the optical qualities, the way that they relate to each other.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's great to hear, because, like, you know, a lot of the work has just been, I see it in the studio. I don't really see people, you know, some friends come by and look at it, but it's always, you know, in a dark basement studio or something. So it's
always different to put it in a gallery space with white walls and bright lights.
And each piece, you know, having space. I was telling someone even yesterday that I was talking to, I was like, oh, you know, they were asking me how I felt about the show, and I was just saying, honestly, I still feel like I'm getting to know, you know, see the work for the first time. So it's nice coming back even today and walking around and getting a sense for it in the space, what the pieces have space. But yeah, I think there are a lot of sort of these small little moments that are like there to be discovered. You know, a lot of the optical components have pieces of mirror. They're embedded in the back, and you won't really notice until you move around the piece, but you'll catch maybe your reflection or the reflection of the trees or the windows on the outside, which you may not notice until you just get to the right vantage point. So it's nice when those things sort of pop out at you.
Can you talk a little bit about your background in ceramics and glass? I mean, I know you grew up in a home where ceramics was a big part of life.
Yeah. So my dad is a ceramic artist. My mom's also a creative. She did a lot of quilting and drawing and painting when I was growing up. And so I was always exposed to handmade objects. And it's been, you know, the house was filled with objects made by my parents and also parents' friends. And I think that, you know, that had a really big influence on me from a young age. And then when I was in high school, I started getting interested in ceramics, and then my dad started teaching me to throw, and then I got pretty interested in it on my own, was doing it in high school classes. And I think I just really, from an early age, was very interested in the process. So the process of, you know, learning how to control the material was really intriguing to me. And then I went off to undergrad, college, wasn't studying ceramics, but was doing ceramics on the side in my free time. And that's where I found Glass, a studio where I was making ceramics in the free time. They had a glass studio, and I used to love going and just watching. It was like a very intriguing thing to watch for me. And gave it a try, took a class in my second to last year in undergrad, and just got totally hooked and spent the last year and a half I was there at UC San Diego. All my free time was over at the glass studio, just being like, what can I do? You know, can I be in the studio? And taking classes, but also helping the people that were there make their work and just trying to soak up as much as possible. Yeah.
Let's keep walking and talking as we can see some the pieces in the show. What do you think, I mean, so that kind of facility with material, how do you think that has kind of led you to, or how do you think that influences this work? I mean, in a way, and I ask that because in a way, these are not like an overt display of technical proficiency. There's an ease to them. There's like almost kind of a casualness, but I think for people who know glass and know ceramics well, I mean, it's very clear that you're using all of this knowledge.
Yeah, I think glass in particular is such a difficult medium to control, that for so long I was so hyper-focused on just being able to control it and, you know, exercise tighter and tighter control. And I think my work was really about that as well. And I think at a certain point, that wasn't the focus for me anymore. I think I just realized that I had sort of acquired enough knowledge to be able to make the things that I wanted to make. So like the technical pursuit wasn't driving me to the studio to whatever. So I think when I was starting this body of work was probably around the time where I think, you know, I was very interested in relinquishing some control and just like seeing what the material would do. So I was kind of set up these parameters for, like with the clay, for instance, just really concentrating on like the surfaces, the texture, and the interaction of the color and the interaction of that with the other materials, and focusing a little bit less on just straight technical mastery. And the same with the glass, is kind of just letting the glass kind of set up these conditions and then let the glass do what it's going to do, and you know, see what came out of that, relinquishing a little bit of the control. And so a lot of the forms are very soft forms. They're a bit amorphous. They're not. A lot of it was kind of responding to what was happening as I was making them, letting them be these really soft amorphous forms, and let the surfaces and the textures really be the focus.
How are you achieving some of these surfaces and textures?
A lot of it is just a layering up over multiple firings. In the case of the ceramics, layers of I use the same basically base glaze, and just mix in different oxides and mason stains, and just a lot of experimentation and figuring out what was making interesting interactions between the layers, and then sort of, you know, this erosive sort of excavating process of taking away, adding it, taking away, firing it, adding and taking away and firing it, and just building up over time these surfaces. And so
I'm looking at some of these pieces, I imagine a lot of the sort of combining of materials happens in the studio, right? After, I mean, these, some, you know, the basic form is probably made, and then you're adding elements and thinking about composition and. What's a lot of time is, you know, I get the initial form out, and then I'll start applying colors. So it's a lot of just reacting to what's going on, and then finally when I get, you know, all of the layers on something that I feel like is maybe complete at that stage, then I'll think about the elements that are added on. So it is a lot of just kind of reacting along the way. Do you have a favorite piece in the show?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think there's
or some that are kind of capturing you right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of it is so new. I'm still sort of figuring that out. I think there's parts where like there's just some really interesting surfaces that happen, but maybe it's not my overall like favorite piece. And there's just little like elements and moments that are really interesting. But I think one of my favorite pieces is the one that's by the entrance there, because I've lived with that one for a little while, and there's just something really interesting about the form, you know, and the surface, and that interacting with the little elements that are added on, that I think that just came together in a way that, I've enjoyed over time.
So some of the glass elements are cast?
There are some cast, these are cast elements. I just make wax positives and then kind of get them to what seems like a interesting form with the glass piece, but you know, it always ends up sort of altering along the way. Like I cast these pieces and then ended up cutting them up, and then adding vitrolite to this one element. So it is always kind of, you know, along the way, weighing what's going on, and then going back to the drawing board, and then it's constant negotiation, I guess.
Yeah, well, which is maybe a good reference to the show title.
Yeah, which was really, the show title was kind of just speaking, I guess for me personally, like my relationship with the material and this ongoing process of back and forth of like this conversation.
The show title, by the way, is Banter. I don't think we said that earlier. So, but yeah, I love that, and you know, I love the way that you've titled the pieces too. There's a sense of humor, I think, throughout the work that's really lovely. Like this one's called Spout, I think.
Spout, yeah.
So like these little references to elements of the form or the colors. And it was really fun at the opening to have your kids here
Oh yeah.
And like talking about helping name some of the pieces.
Yeah, that was actually.
This one's sticky.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting, or I mean, it always is with me, I guess, with objects like this, where a lot of it for me is about the process and the material and kind of this conversation, because I feel like it's not necessarily about like the concept. So giving it names sometimes feels like just an awkward part of the process, but that was really helpful for me, actually. Just I sat down with our kids and showed them pictures of all the pieces, and we kind of went through it, but it's just like what these references that pop out, and not trying to clamp down like too serious with the title, because it is a lot of times making these things for me is like is playful, like a joyful process. Yeah, I don't want it to be too.
I think that comes through in the work. I mean, this is a fantastic piece that it just elicits so much joy, I think, and like sunshine, and it's called Pool Party. I love it. It feels like a summer day in LA.
Yeah, this was, I guess, ended up being really the only piece sort of similar. I had a couple of others that I started that were these kind of architectural elements that were going to be combined with these glass components. So this is the only one that ended up making it in. And yeah, and the colors was a total unexpected, kind of like how wild the colors ended up turning out. But I really do love the surfaces that ended up coming out of this piece.
Yeah, it actually, in some ways, references some of your earlier work in its architectural nature. And for those who haven't seen Granite's earlier work, well, I should let you describe them. I think of them as these kind of studies of vessel forms and like silhouettes and
silhouettes, and it was really about achieving these really beautiful formal lines. The process was often like making these components, cutting them apart, putting them back together in the cold shop to achieve these forms that maybe early on I had sort of dreamed up about making in the hot shop, but it wasn't really possible with the limitations of that process. So this, taking it as this component approach and then recombining them and really spending a lot of time in the cold shop, cutting, grinding, polishing, made this whole other body of work possible.
Yeah, which I think, it's funny, some people have come and said, oh, this is such a huge departure from your earlier work. But when you say it like that, like combining these elements, thinking about the relationship of these things to create this final piece, they are related. It is this sort of evolution of an idea.
Yeah. I guess the way it presents itself is pretty different than the previous body of work, but the way that I'm producing, like a lot of parts of the process are similar.
Yeah. This is a great piece. I love this big vessel form.
Yeah, this and I guess the one piece over there are the only ones that ended up in the show that have, I guess, a more or less like traditional vessel form, which I almost thought of leaving them out, but it's enough like it's just a simple form. It's a cylinder, which I think can be a lot of things. But yeah, I really like this one. Has these very large, solid components on it that. Like you were saying earlier, there's kind of these moments where you pass around where you catch, especially on these ones, there's a piece of color laminated on the back. It's a clear component, and then also a piece of mirror behind that. So as you move around it, you catch the color that's back there, and then you also catch the light bouncing back out from the mirror.
So this is actually clear.
Yeah.
And then the color that we're seeing is from the color that's laminated to the back of it, and then there's mirror behind that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I love the way it like casts these bits of light onto the ceramic piece itself too, and it changes so much throughout the day as the light in here changes. We get this wonderful afternoon sun in here, and so this just gets this hit of light around like 5 o'clock.
Oh yeah.
And it just pops. It throws light all over the place. It's really cool. Are there other things you want to be sure to point out before we end our little tour?
I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think, Deb? Anything else we should talk about? We're good?
All right. Well, Granite, thank you so much. It really is wonderful to have the exhibition in the gallery and to see the evolution of your work. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in.